Hello and Happy New Year to you. In this tutorial we're going to be making a trailing floral pattern just like this one here. We'll be using this trailing floral diamond repeat template which you can download from my freebie library, and there's a link for that in the description. This is a more advanced level tutorial, so if you've never made a pattern using the diamond method before, then I recommend watching this video for an introduction to the concept if this one here feels a bit too tricky. I'm going to show you how to get started if you do already have my pattern maker canvas, and also how to get set up if you don't. So for those of you that do have the pattern maker canvas, you can open up a blank copy of that there and go into your sketch layer, and we're going to go to insert a file once you've downloaded it from my freebie library. So we go to add, insert a file, then you can go to your downloads and bring this trailing floral pattern template in there to your sketch layer. If you don't have the pattern maker canvas, you can still follow along with this tutorial. You'll need to create a new canvas, so we'll tap up here and the width needs to be 3600 pixels, and the same for the height, 3600 pixels, and the DPI at 300. That is a 12-inch canvas. So then we can go ahead and click create. And then you can bring that same PNG file into this one. So we go to add, insert a file, and tap this one to bring that file in there. Next, you're going to need to make a diamond layer to help you with your sketch layers. And perhaps the easiest way to do that is if you add a layer above this, and just using any old brush, just going to grab this big airbrush there, and using any colour, it doesn't really matter what colour we use, I'm just going to draw around the outsides of the canvas like this, making sure I go over the edges. Then we're going to tap to select, rotate it 45 degrees, and then hit fit to canvas. And then what you should see is that on all the edges here, this goes off the edges of the canvas. You shouldn't see any empty pixels there. This is very important that this goes all the way to the edge. So if we tap our transform thing up here, you should see that this grabs all the way to the edge of the canvas on each side. So just go up here and make sure that you're also grabbing all the way to the edge, and also down here make sure that this diamond covers all the way top to bottom, edge to edge of the canvas, and then you are good to go and carry on following along with this tutorial. So I'm going to go back out into my pattern maker canvas template. This already has the diamond in there, and it also has these crosshairs on the edges to help you verify that it's in exactly the right place when we move it around later. It also has these seamless textures on here. If I zoom in here, you can see it has this nice seamless texture built into it, and this set also comes with all the brushes that I'll be using today. I'll put a link in the description if you want to find out more about the pattern maker canvas. So on this template here, the parts that we're going to be illustrating in our pattern folder are the red ones. The blue ones will be illustrating in our extra folder, and the grey ones around the outside, they're going to be made by duplicating these parts around the outside. And again, I do want to just repeat, this isn't a beginner tutorial, so if you're already confused, then you should go and check out the beginner friendly tutorial on using patterns in the diamond repeat first. So because this layout is already worked out for you, I've already done the bones of the sketch here. It's kind of up to you how much extra work you want to add into your sketch layer. If you literally just want to trace over these leaf shapes as they are and the stem shapes as they are, then you could just skip the sketch refining and go straight into illustrating this. But if you want to change the leaf shapes or angles slightly, then I would sketch that out so you can make sure it all works together before you spend time working on the final illustration. I'm going to keep things fairly simple in this one, but I do want to switch up the leaf shapes a little bit, so I am going to go ahead and sketch this out. So I'm going to use the Fun Sketcher brush from my pattern set here, and I'll do this in black so that you can see what I'm doing. And normally I would start in the draw here first layer, but because I'm not going to be moving stuff around, I already know its position because I'm going to follow the sketch. I'm just going to start drawing on the sketch diamond layer. So I'm going to use the stamp brush from my stylized floral set, which is also in my freebie library, and I'm going to grab the 7-petal flower here. And I'm just going to stamp this out in the middle of these red flowers here. And the sizing I've got on this one is 16%, if you've got this brush and want to follow along exactly. So I'm just tapping it, stamping it on the middle of these circles here. So that's all of those done. then I'm going to switch back to my fun sketcher brush, and I'm not going to bother tracing over all of the stems because these are going to be in exactly the same position. What I'm just going to do is just refine the outside of the leaf shapes. So I'll just add these in, and I'm going to put a bit more of a pointy curve onto these leaves like this. And as you're working through, if you wanted to add more leaves on, that's totally a thing you could do. So you can add leaves onto this. Once you get more comfortable working with this trailing floral, you can add your own extra leaves and things in there. I'm just going to stick with the leaves that we already have on here for now. And the reason that I want to sketch all these out is anytime that you're like changing things up, it's always a good idea to have a preview of that and see how it's working. So we'll just go and put all of these in. Actually, I think I will just roughly put these stems in because that's going to allow us to turn the template layer off and get a better idea with the preview what this feels like. So I will just go over those. So that's all the red parts drawn over now. I'm going to duplicate this layer and work on the extra parts as we normally do. So I'm going to duplicate this, tap to transform and drag it all the way and snap it to the left there till I've got my orange lines there. And then do that with this one again. And then I'm also going to do that with the PNG. I've just merged those two together, and I'm going to do it with this one as well so we can get that into the middle. So I'm going to duplicate this one and drag half of it over there. Duplicate it. Sorry, not duplicate it. Tap to transform and then drag this over here. And then we can pinch those two together. So I've got the kind of switched round PNG template on the bottom and then my sketch diamond on the top. So I'm not drawing this one here in, this is on the grey layer. This one's going to be made by transforming the rest, and we've actually put this flower in further down. It's this one down here. So what we need to do on this layer now is just draw in the blue parts in the middle here. So we can just make these don't want to go too far in there. But that's an example of why we would sketch this out, because say that these come out a little bit further than the thing. If we'd come out like a little bit further there and we'd made this one go in a bit further, when we come to check this out, we'd see that we've got a bit of overlap there. So that's why I like to do a bit of sketching out still, even though we've got the bones of the template in there. Just put this last one in, and that's everything now traced over apart from these bits around here, but they'll be made in a second when we duplicate it. So let's put this back into the middle now. So I've duplicated that and bringing it back into the middle. We'll do the same with the sketch layer. And I've just realised with this one on mine here, these ones are blue. I probably should have changed the colour of these to grey, because these are the repeated versions of these ones up here. So on your template, this part here and this blue part here is going to be grey, because that's part of the duplicated bit. So I don't want to confuse you by saying you draw everything that's blue in the extra section when you've got these bits here that are blue. So I've got to change the colour on those. So on yours, you will just have these edge parts here in blue, and on yours, these parts here will be grey to avoid the confusion. So now I'm going to turn this template layer off, and on this one here we'll do our offset to fill in the bits around the edges and get a preview of how this is looking now. So we'll duplicate that and bring this down into the corners as we normally do. I've got the light shining on this part up here from where I'm sat, and I keep having to move to see where the layer thing is. I can't see it very well. There we go. So that's our sketch all built out and refined now. To check how that's flowing and make sure that we're happy with any extra parts we might have added in, or the shape of the leaves where we've changed that up, I'm going to swipe down with 3 fingers, tap copy all. I'm going to come up here to my very top layer swipe down again with 3 fingers, and I'm going to tap paste. Then I'm just going to drag this up into the middle there. You should see 1800 pixels in that part there. And then we'll just repeat this around the canvas. Merge these two together, duplicate that, and drag it down. And just check that we're happy with the layout there, that we haven't kind of changed any leaf shapes and made them go too far into anything else, and that we're happy with the general layout of that, which I am. So we can get rid of this top layer now, and now we can start to illustrate our motifs. So in your pattern maker canvas, you can collapse your sketch layer there. Actually, what we might do is bring down the opacity on the middle bit. So this middle part we're working on, we can bring down the opacity on that. And then the bits we've just put around the outside, I'm just going to pinch all those together, and I'm going to make them a different colour. So I'll alpha lock those. We'll make them blue. Fill that and turn the opacity down on that as well. So the parts we need to illustrate are just these ones here in the grey colour now. So if you're working in the pattern maker canvas, we're going to turn our pattern layer on now, and we're going to start drawing on this layer here. If you don't have a pattern maker canvas, just add a fresh layer above your sketch layers, and that's the one we'll now be illustrating in. So I'm going to start by drawing out the stems. When you're working with these trailing floral templates, or any kind of trailing pattern where you've got bits crossing over here, the stems are the place to start. So I'm going to grab my tracing crayon, and we'll use this green colour here. And how thick is this brush? Yeah, we'll use this one. So I'm going to start drawing up here, just past the edge of this diamond here, and I'm going to come down and I'm going to take it past this line here, because this is where it's eventually going to join up. So this part we draw here, so say from like there onwards, that's going to be from there downwards when we duplicate it to the outside. So I'm going to draw this in first, then I'm going to repeat it down there, and then refine where they match up. So hopefully you'll see what I mean as I start doing this. So I'm going to make this at a better angle so I can make sure I've got plenty of room to draw that there. So I'm going to draw that in down here, nice and smooth. So I've started this side of the diamond there, and I've gone down past it there. Now to help make sure that I've got these connected up, I'm going to duplicate this and move it down here. So I'm going to add some marks onto this stem layer. So I've gone off the edges there and off the edges there. Then I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to bring it down. Let's just move this out of the way so you can see. And I'm going to bring this down into the corner there and snap it into the bottom corner. And as you can see, we've already got a pretty good match up there for where we followed our sketch line. And then I'm going to duplicate it again and also snap it up into this top corner. So we've got that continual line now that's going across our canvas, and that's just going to continually duplicate. Did I just accidentally draw on there? I think I did. Undo that. So I'm going to make our original layer, the bottom one, I'm going to alpha lock that, and we'll make that blue, just so that we can see the difference between the two. And let's un-alpha lock that now. And what we want to do is decide whether we're going to erase some of the top part here, and if it's easier to connect this line up with the bottom part there, or if it's easier to connect up this end of the line with the curve we've got there. And looking at this, I think it's going to be easier. I think the end of this curve is better. You'll often find the beginning of your curve is a bit more wobbly than the end of your curve. You kind of get into the flow of the curve by the end of it. So if you've started up here and drawn down, it might be easier to adjust up here and blend into this one. So what I'm going to do is take my eraser, I'm on the blue layer, and I'm just going to erase back a little bit on there, then grab the brush again, and what I'm going to do is draw over here and join up and go into this line. So I'm going to start a little bit further down, so I start on the line there, and then just bring it up onto there. I think I might have gone a bit wobbly there. This part always involves a little bit of trial and error and redrawing, and just keep refining it until you get to where you're happy with it. I think that still might be a bit weird there. Let's try it from this angle. So we'll just draw along there. I'm just going to hide my sketch layer. That's always helpful to turn your sketch layer off, and then you can see a lot more of that line. So if I now make this green, or alpha lock that, and make that green. So you can see up here now we've got that line nicely filled out, and we've got a smooth transition from there to there. So what we can do now is delete these two ones we duplicated above it, and to test that we're happy with both ends of this, we can duplicate this bottom one again, drag that up into the corners like that, and then the same down into the bottom right corner there. And then we can turn our sketch layer on so we can see where the edges of the diamond are. And you can see we've got this nice continual line going all across the canvas there. So these two that I've duplicated, I'm going to pinch those together, and I'm going to erase these bits in the middle there. And we can also erase these bits on the bottom stem. So we've got, I'm going to rename these to keep track of them. So we've got this one, which is stem, and then we've got this one, which is a duplicate. So you can bring down the opacity on that one so that you can keep track of what's what on your canvas. So that's the basics of how to get this continual line going when you're working with a diamond repeat. I'm going to go over that quickly again one more time. So when you start sketching, you draw off the edge of this diamond to down here off the edge of this one. Then you add your marks to this layer, and you can duplicate that up to the top left and down to the bottom right. Then I find it's easier to match up the beginning of my curve with the end of the other one. So on my bottom layer, I'm going to erase the beginning of that line a little way, and then we draw that back in to merge it with this one. So let's join that up there. So we've got those nicely joined now. You can spend time getting this more precise if you want to. So I'm going to go back to the first two that I did, and I'm going to un-alpha lock my stem layer so I can draw on this one, and the duplicate is just so I know where things are if I want to see where the edges go, and we'll delete that one later. So once you've got that initial stem in that crosses the lines, you can then go and just add in all your other stems the same way as you would working through a pattern maker canvas pattern. So I'm going to whiz through putting all these leaves in now. And here on this one, I'm going to be joining the end of this curve in with the carried on bit down there. So as I bring this one down, I'm just going to merge this in with where the other end of this line is up the top there. So that's why it's useful to have these other bits of that left in for now while we're drawing these out. And then this part here, these leaves here, and those correspond with these ones on this side. I'm going to do those part in my extra section later where we bring the edges of the canvas into the middle. So I'm going to leave those off for now, and I'm going to put the leaves in next. So I'll add a layer underneath to do that, and we'll make those this green colour. And the next thing I'm going to do is add a layer above the stems to do the flowers. So we'll do those in yellow, and I'm just going to make some circles on these. I'm going to draw, hold, and then touch the screen, and that will snap to a perfect circle. Don't know if you can hear, but there's a helicopter flying overhead right now. Fun fact, I live in a town that has both an air ambulance and we have a helicopter factory. So at multiple points during the day, there are always the helicopters flying overhead. So now underneath the stems, underneath the flower centres, I'm going to add another layer, and we'll do the flower petals. I think I'll do these in white. Actually, what I'm going to do is move this layer above so that I can make sure I'm closing up the gaps underneath, and then we'll drag it back underneath afterwards. So by making sure I'm closing up these gaps, when we come to colour fill, we're not going to end up with colour spilling out all over the place. And the reason I've drawn this one down here rather than up here as part of the extra section is it's going to make it easier when we come to put all this together if all the flowers are on the top layer, rather than having to weave too many different parts of the pattern in and over the top of each other. So if I can get all of my flowers in on one layer, then I will draw them in on the same layer. So now I can drag these back underneath and we can fill all of these petals with colour drop. So that's all of the illustration on the pattern group done now. So we can close that layer, and I'm just going to quickly turn off the textures. So this is what you'll see, what yours will look like if you don't have the textures on. That's with the textures, and that's without. I'm going to swipe down to copy all, and then I'm going to turn on my extra group up here, and I'm going to swipe down again with 3 fingers, and I'm going to tap paste. And that's going to put a flattened copy of everything in there. The reason that I've turned the texture layer off is if I'd swiped down and copied it with the texture layer on and then paste it in again with the texture layer turned off, you get a double texture effect because it's copied it with the texture and then applying the texture over the top. So that's why I turned the texture off to copy it. So in this extra group now, we can add a layer that we'll be working on. We can duplicate this pasted image there, and we're going to drag it over to the side there and snap it to the edge, and then this other one will snap that to the edge, pinch those two together, and then we just need to put these grey parts in here. So on this layer here we'll put the stems in first, and we need to connect that up with this one down here. There we go. And then these 2 leaves up here. And then remember, we don't need to do that flower because that's the same one that we've done on the top layer instead. So now we just need to put the leaves in underneath that. And I think we'll add a bit of shading to these. So I'm going to add a layer above, make it a clipping mask. And I'm going to grab my, let's use the large gradient texture brush for this one, and I'm going to grab a grey colour. This one is just a 50% grey. You can get that by double tapping in this area of the circle here. I'm going to make my blend mode colour burn, and then I'm just going to add a bit of darker texture to the bottom of these leaves. Let's make opacity on that 40%. So we'll just add a bit of darker colour to the bottoms of those leaves there. And then we'll add another layer in there, make this one colour dodge 40%, and using the same grey we'll just add a bit of lighter to the tops of those leaves there. Okay, that's all of those. And I'm also going to put a bit of shadow here on the leaves where it's coming out from underneath the daisy. So I'm going to add a layer above the stems, make it a clipping mask, colour burn 40, make the brush a bit smaller, and where this is going to be coming out from underneath the petal there, just make that a little bit darker. That's all our extra group illustrating done now. You can turn that group off and we'll come back to that one later. Now we just need to do that shading on this layer as well. So I'll whiz through doing the leaves and the stems that we've just done in the extra layer. And then I'm going to add a bit of shading to the centres of the flowers as well. So add a layer, clip it down, colour burn 40. And I'm going to add, with the grey, just add a bit of darker tone to the bottom rights of these flower middles there. I'm going to add a layer in between those and make this one colour dodge 40%. Just put a bit of lighter colour onto the tops of those there. And on that same layer I'm going to grab the sandstorm brush and just scribble over that a little bit, just to put a bit of extra texture in there. And I'm also going to do that on the colour burn layer, just put a bit of darker. If I zoom in, you can see just adds a little bit of extra texture in there, which is nice. And I think I'm going to do that on the 2 leaf layers as well. I'll make my brush a bit bigger for this one. And on my colour dodge layer above the leaves, I'm just going to scribble over there, and then also on the colour burn layer, I'm going to scribble over there as well. There you go, you can see that's without any of that shading, and then that's with the shading. And if we turn the texture overlay layer off, that's what we've got underneath. And then just so that we can get some texture in on these white petals, because the blend modes colour burn and colour dodge don't have any effect on white or pure black, I'm going to add a layer above this. I'm going to make the flowers the same colour as my background, so I'm going to fill it with this cream colour, and then on this layer above I'm going to clip that one down. I'm going to grab my fun sketcher brush, make it as big as it will go. I'm going to grab white, and I'm just going to scribble over this. And that's just going to add a bit of texture there in with the petals, so they kind of match the vibe of the rest of the drawing, just so then they're not that plain flat white. Now I said flat white, I want a coffee. There we go. So that's all of our illustrating done now. Now we can start to build this pattern out. So I'm going to collapse my pattern group. Actually, I'm going to go in and turn off this pattern marker layer first. Then I'm going to collapse my pattern group, and I'm going to turn off the texture layers for now, and I'm going to turn off the sketch, and I'm going to turn off the background colour. And on the background layer I want to get rid of this semi-transparent bit, so the part that we called duplicate. I'm going to turn that off, and then I'm going to swipe down with 3 fingers. I'm going to copy all, and up here above my layers group I'm going to paste that in. You could have also done that by duplicating the whole pattern group and flattening it, but some of you might not have enough spare layers left at this point, depending on how complex your pattern was. So you can either duplicate and flatten a group, or you can copy all and paste. Either of those ways is fine. So then I can turn the pattern group off, and I'll turn this pasted in image off. Now I'm going to turn my extra group back on, and I will do this one by duplicating. So I'm going to duplicate the group. I'm going to delete that layer, delete the extra marker, and turn the other one off. Now on this duplicated extra group I can tap flatten on there. So what we need to do now is put this back in its position on the edges first. So let's move that up to the top there, and I'm going to draw a mark off the corners of both of those edges there. I'm going to duplicate that layer and bring it over to the side, and then bring this one over to the other side. Then we can pinch those together and erase that marker there. Then we can turn our main pattern bit on, and what you want to make sure is that before you merge these together that you've got them the right way around. So you don't want your extra group on top of the flowers here, because then you'll have that stalk coming over the top. So make sure that at this stage all of your flowers are on top and they haven't got any stems coming over the top of them. Once you're at this point, we can merge those two together and put the background colour back in as well now. And I'm going to draw that same mark in on the corners there with a brush, not an eraser. And now we can repeat this offset thing and put this into all of the corners. So we'll duplicate it and bring it down here. And when we get to some of these bits, you'll see that some of them need to go in slightly different positions in the layers. So we'll bring that up there. And then this last one down here. Make sure we snap it into the corner properly. There we go. So normally we would merge those together at this point, but because we've got overlapping things, down here we have got this bit this stem going over the top of the flower. So what you want to do with this one is just drag it underneath your main group like that, and then just have a quick scan round to make sure that all of the bits that are supposed to be on top are on top and you haven't got any other bits lurking around, and then we can go and erase these extra bits of marks we put in. So let's get rid of that one, the two on the outside corners of the main bit, and then this one down here. And then that is our pattern all finished now. We can turn our textures back on. I zoom in so you can see the magic before and afters. This is without the textures, and then that's with the textures turned on. And then to test this is tiling smoothly, what we can do is swipe down with 3 fingers to copy all. Come up to the top here above our textures, or tap on the texture group, swipe down again and tap paste. And then we can drag this up to the top quarter until we've got 1800 pixels in there. Then we can duplicate that and put it around the other parts of the canvas. And that is our finished trailing floral pattern. There's a whole bunch of different directions you can take this template in. Here's a look at some other patterns I've made using this template. I've stuck to the positioning of the main stems and how they connect at the edges of the diamond, but I've switched up the positioning and the number of leaves on some of them by making some tweaks over the top of the template when I'm working in the sketch layers for each pattern. I hope you have lots of fun working with this template. Please share your patterns on Instagram and tag me at Rebecca Flaherty so I can see them and share them in my stories. If you've enjoyed this video, then don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more tutorials like this every week. I'm definitely going to be making some more tutorials for different floral patterns using this template. If you want to learn more about the diamond repeat and how I use it in my professional workflow alongside Photoshop, then I have a Skillshare course on that, and you can get a 30-day free trial when you join me using the link below. You'll get access to all of my classes, plus all of the other great courses that are on Skillshare. Thank you for watching, stay creative, and I will see you soon.